Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to M4J Transport here on Cities in Motion 2. I know you said Football Manager 2018 then. I'm so used to saying M4J something and then Football Manager. Anyway, trams, or more precisely PreMetro. For those of you who are not aware of what PreMetro is, it's a term that's used mostly in European cities. I believe there are some networks in the US that are starting to be referred to as this name as well. There are none in the UK that have that designation. The one that comes closest, perhaps, is the Docklands Light Railway, but that's technically classed as light rail, clues in the name. PreMetro is a system that has been built to support a tram network, for example, but with the future-proofing to convert it to a full metro system. So I'm trying to think of an example where it has actually then been converted into metro. There aren't many that spring to mind, to be honest. I think because a lot of the time the PreMetro construction finishes and then it becomes quite successful, so they just leave it as is. But the ones in the US that could be classed as PreMetro, LA and San Francisco, they're trams that go underground. Again, they're technically light rail, but they could also be classed as PreMetro, particularly... I mean, I suppose a good example, I've been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto 5 lately. If you look at the sort of metro system in Los Santos, that could be described as PreMetro, because yes, it runs on the street at certain points, but it's actually been built to metro standards, but is currently supporting tram or light rail style vehicles. So that's what we're building in this city. We are building a PreMetro network. We're not building it all today, we are just building the first two lines. As you'll know, there are 4 underground stops underneath New Tram Square, and there's also this one here underneath the original bus hub, I suppose you could call it. We'll have to come up with names for these. I'll talk more about that in just a second, in fact. But yeah, overall I'm happy with this network. I'm happy with how it looks, I'm happy with how it runs. The game itself, the old bugs that used to frustrate me in the past, they are rearing their ugly heads again. Random vehicles just stopping in the street for no reason. That's one bug that's cropped up again. And it actually makes the entirety of New Tram Square grind to a halt whenever it happens there, because all the vehicles start stacking up and blocking each other, and then it gets completely gridlocked. So yeah, you just reset the lines and it fixes itself, but it's frustrating that you have to keep doing that. Likewise, certain amounts of pedestrians crossing the street can also block roads and cause vehicles to pile up, which is also frustrating. And there's a couple of others, but I won't talk about them right now. The game does crash from time to time as well, but hasn't yet in an episode, which is nice. Although, touch wood, hasn't happened yet in an episode. Hopefully it never will. But yeah, we are linking all these hubs up together, or at least some of the hubs up together with some stops. You might have already seen where it runs over large bodies of water, and I use the word over because they are built on bridges rather than underground through tunnels, mainly for aesthetic purposes. It's actually nicer to follow a vehicle over a bridge than it is through a tunnel, because you end up with this weird camera looking down on top of the vehicle type angle, and I don't like that very much. It doesn't do me any favours, that's for sure. So as I say, we build 2 lines. They technically run the same route, but there are 2 types. There's express, and then there's technically stopping, although it should be considered semi-fast really. Some stops are relatively close together. Just like with the way I've built the bus network, I haven't really tried to set distances between stops. It really is just where I felt like we needed a stop, I've built a stop. The majority of the time it is 4-track, with the 2 express tracks in the middle and the 2 stopping tracks on the outside. That's also the case with stations, where the express tracks either run straight through the middle or their stops are in the middle, and then the stopping tracks are on the outside. There are some exceptions. There are loops at both ends of the line, balloon loops, where it is 2-track running. Again, the express track is on the left hand side, the slow track is on the right hand side. And then underneath New Tram Square there are sections where the express tracks still run side by side, but the stopping tracks branch off and then cross over the top of the express track and go into their stop. Like I said, I'm really happy with the result. I think it works really nicely. This line in particular was always going to be the hardest one to do, because it's deciding where this line goes, which areas of the city it serves. Once that's done, then the other line, you know, it kind of sorts itself out, as it were. This line pretty much is a north to south running. It connects some of the main hubs. You can see there it connects 2 bus hubs. It also connects up with New Tram Square, of course, and it does connect up a few other major stops, particularly on the North Island. I was focusing on having these trams stop near busy bus stops to try and take some of the pressure off of those bus stops. It sort of worked. I've done a few test runs with different sized vehicles. I'll talk about the vehicle sizes in just a second, because they have changed quite drastically from what you see on screen. And yeah, these lines are designed to get more people moving quickly around the city. So I still want the trams at surface level to be popular, of course, and I still want the buses and trolleys to be popular, particularly the buses, because the whole justification of my my bus network in last episode would be a bit redundant if I then didn't use the buses properly. So we will be working hard to make them work. Everything bus related is to complement everything else, essentially. So they are like little hopper services, connecting up services type things, and eventually I will make the buses free to encourage more people to actually use them and not just clog up the metro and everything like that all the time. What else was I going to talk about? I suppose we could talk about this connection here whilst you see me build it on screen. So the existing underground platforms at this hub that are currently used by the surface trams, they will also now be used by the stopping PreMetro trams. There is enough space, I've checked. It does mean that you get this interesting loop here, so I've built an additional stop there that is only served by southbound trams. Northbound trams bypass that completely. Kind of operates a bit like, I think it's West Ferry. Or West, is it West Ferry? It might be West India Quays actually, on the DLR, where trains from Bank heading towards Woolwich, I think it is, or Lewisham, down to the south. Lewisham, it is Lewisham, yeah. Through Canary Wharf, they don't stop at, I think it is West India Quay. Someone will tell me, someone always tells me in the comments. They don't stop at West India Quay because the way that the new flying junction was built at Delta Junction meant that they couldn't build a platform for that line. So I think in one direction it does serve it, heading towards Bank, but heading away from Bank it bypasses it. And that's kind of what we've got here as well. So that hub, the express platforms are built slightly deeper and also slightly off to the side. I think the coverage is still fine, that it does connect up with buses. All the buses and all the trolley lines there, so it shouldn't be a problem, and it definitely connects up with both sets of tram platforms as well, so that's good. This is me starting to build the southern side, and again trying to get the lines out from underground in middle of busy cities like this. It's actually quite difficult. I do come up with quite a nice looking bridge to tunnel transition there. It is quite a steep slope, but again, if you ride on things like the DLR, and I always use the DLR as an example for this because it is the nearest system of this type to where I live. There are quite steep slopes. There are also quite sharp curves, and you know, there's an awful flange squeal as the trains actually head over them. But besides that, it works pretty damn nicely, I would say. So not much of an issue. This side is actually a lot easier to tunnel it underground because it's all industrial buildings, and I'm not really that fussed on industrial buildings because people work in them, yes, and they will travel to and from them, but they don't live in them, so there's no hazard to demolishing them. This part of the line does get a little interesting because I wanted to connect it to that really weird tram bridge tunnel thing that we have on I think it was Route 301, wasn't it, the original tram line that we built. And I do connect it up, and I do connect it up quite nicely. Because of the way the hills slope here, though, it's a really weird looking transition. Like suddenly you're really deep underground, and then you know, within seconds you're barely underground. And you can see here I'm constantly fiddling around with the height settings to try and make this work. Particularly as the road above, I was using that as a datum, and then realised that actually that slopes more severely than anything else. So I kind of had to just ignore it in the end. And you can see already there I built both areas where the stopping and express trams would run. The reason I did that was just to get you know, do it once and then not have to do it again kind of feeling going from there. I did several passes over this network to get it running. So the first one here, I'm just building the express line to begin with. So that bit of bus lane that I built there, that's for an express running tram. And then once I finished all of that, I then went back and did the stopping and other sort of connection bits. Like you can see here, I'm connecting new trams square up. The stopping platforms I'm connecting up to the main tram running line. This was really difficult as well, this side. The north side was a lot easier. This side was more difficult because of that road tunnel that passes underneath that main avenue. As you can see, I really have to squeeze it just the other side. And then I think I decided to actually build a stop here, but for some stupid reason I put the tracks right underneath that set of roads. So I had to demolish the roads, build the in and outs there, connect the roads back up, and then I connect this line up to New Tram Square again, like so. And here is me going back and putting all the stopping loops in, of which there are quite a few actually. Turns out there are quite a few. And I suppose whilst I'm doing this bit, I will start talking about vehicles. So originally, in my head, I was thinking of using Prospector Royals, both the M's and the L's, and you'll see me mess it up in a second, but the original plan was to have the M's running on the express lines and the L's running on the stopping lines. The reason being is, yes, more people will use the faster lines because they're quicker, therefore those trams will be packed, but they will run faster and therefore more frequently, whereas the stopping trams, there are 3 stops, I think is the maximum between connections with the fast trams, so more and more people will be getting on at all of these stops, and then they'll all crowd off in one go to get onto a faster tram. So yeah, the fast tram will end up being rammed, but there will be more frequent services on that line because of how little stops there are, and the fact that they are timetabled the same, so there would be a tram every like 10 minutes during rush hour starting from the original stop, but by the time you start going round, I suppose there would be a tram every 10 minutes no matter what stop you're at. But yeah, that was the original idea, to use the Prospector Royals. You'll see me get them the wrong way round a little bit later on in this episode. I might as well say that now because someone will point it out, because someone always does. I changed my mind though after running it for a little while, mainly because they weren't big enough. Can you believe it? You build a line that gets you through the city in half the time all the other lines, and suddenly everyone wants to use it, which, you know, that sounds logical. So I've actually gone with the... I've forgotten what they're called, but they are the biggest vehicle. Is it the something TTS tram car, I think they're called? Hang on. I should also explain the origin of this idea as well. As with a lot of things in this series, it's sort of inspired by discussions with people. And, you know, Josh's name will come up again because I'm always talking to him about ideas, we're always sharing ideas. And I always had it in my head, this was from way, way back. Someone wanted me to build underground tram lines. And I can't remember who it was, and I'm so sorry I can't remember your name because it was such a good idea. And it was on the other city that I like playing on. It wasn't this one, it was the East City, I think, or West City, or North City, I can't remember which one it is now. This is Central City, I know that much. So when it came to doing this series, I always wanted to build an underground tram network again, which is why New Tram Square was built with underground stops. But originally it was going to be, they would run underground for a little bit, and then they'll just run up to street level again. And it was only when I was talking to Josh, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, and it was something he said as well about an actual underground tram network, and I thought, hang on a minute, that would be a perfect idea for this city. There will be metro still, but the metro will be for more like long distance journeys. So from the northern tip of the map right down to the southern tip of the map, you would get a bus or a tram or whatever it be to the nearest metro stop, and then you would take the metro to, I don't know, a hub somewhere in the south, and then you would take another bus or a tram or a trolley, wherever it might be, to get to your final destination. So the metros are really going to be hub linkers. Same with the monorail. they're going to be used for hub linking services. They won't just be strictly used for that. They will be used for other reasons as well. But underground trams is actually a very cool idea because the trams have good capacity, so it makes sense to run them in ways in which they can carry more people more quickly, which is what this system came about from. And then the idea of slow and fast trams. Originally, it was going to be one line, because we built the 4 underground stops. One line would head off to the northeast corner, one to the southeast, one to the northwest, one to the southwest, that kind of thing. And they would all terminate at New Tram Square. But it was Josh who said to me one night about, are you thinking of doing express and stopping? And I do remember when I was building New Tram Square, I was talking about I think it was the express trams. The stopping trams would come back up to street level at the time and run along the street, and then the express tram stops would actually join up with metro tracks and run on the outside of a metro service running through the middle. And I might still use that at places on the map, but not necessarily for these lines that you're seeing being built now. These lines will probably get extended and changed at some points in the future, but not by huge amounts. But yeah, I was talking to Josh about it one night. I was telling him about that idea, and then he said about, why don't you have express and stopping on the same track and do a 4-track line through the middle of the city. And you know, this is the result. And actually this is segueing again very nicely, because station construction is the next big thing. So you remember in the past, if I wanted to build a station connection, I would literally just bulldoze a road and replace that with a path going down into a tunnel. This time I'm basing it not on specific London Underground stations, but around the concept of how London Underground stations work. So what I mean by that is, like King's Cross St Pancras, for example. You enter King's Cross St Pancras, the entrance I use is directly underneath the main concourse of King's Cross. And it's a very nice new entrance. The concourse itself is fantastic. It makes such a difference to a station that really was starting to get run down. Anyway, that's a segue. The platforms for the Metropolitan, Circle and Hammersmith and City lines are actually based quite a long way away from the main line station itself. You have to go under Euston Road, and then I think it's like 200 yards down the road as well, to where the old Thameslink platforms are. And then the subsurface underground lines are a little bit further away, a little bit closer to the station than that, because the tracks sort of do still run side by side. They have changed a lot since they were first built, but the widened lines, as they're known. And that's kind of what this was inspired by. So the idea is that like the stations will be built under hubs, or they'll be built under key buildings. I will start adding landmarks in the future as well, to get more people to travel to more different locations around the map. But the station entrances might be built like a street or so away, and you have to walk up a street to the entrance, underground, and then back to where you came from. And that's the station setup. Some stations are joined together underground as well. There are 2 that are relatively close together on the southern island, or the southern peninsula, I suppose it is. I find it confusing. I'll have to designate this as for now. So the island that we worked on first, I will refer to as the North Island. The island in which the new Tram Square is built on, that will be the South Island. City South was obviously south of the South Island, and then west, and then east. Until we name them, that's what they're going to be called. So there are 2 stations in City South that are connected underground by walkways, because they were quite close together from where I built the entrance. And again, you know, that happens in real life. Crossrail, for example, is linking Farringdon and Barbican stations, and also Liverpool Street and Moorgate stations are getting linked together that way. I think there's a couple in the west as well, but I'm not entirely sure. Again, someone will tell me. Someone always tells me. I was trying to get a vehicles list to try and find the name of that tram. It's the biggest tram in the game. That's what I'll tell you. It's the biggest tram in the game. You'll know it when you see it, kind of thing. So yeah, under some of the hubs as well, there are more than one entrance, for obvious reasons. You know, busy hubs get more than one entrance. Some of these stations here, for example, as well, I can see this station here being a big interchange, because it's got the tram line running directly underneath it too. So that has been compensated for in the design. Some just have one entrance, some have very sort of janky entrances, but again, that's based on real life, which is why it works quite well, I suppose, because not every underground station. Oh, these are the two stations that are linked together, by the way, because you can see how close they were. Not every station in London was built to a good design at the time, and over time, teams and teams of designers and engineers and workmen have tried to solve the problem that the Victorians left us, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. And that's why stations like Victoria, for example, were closed or under reconstruction for a long periods of time, so they can fix the mistakes that well, not mistakes, it's just lack of forethought, I suppose. No one really envisaged that the underground would become as popular as it is now. And I actually read an article recently that last year the passenger numbers dropped on the underground. I think they had like an £8 million drop in revenue, which is quite a lot when you think about it. And it might well be because people are just getting fed up of the constant upgrade works disrupting their travels. And it is a bit like that. You can't walk through London at the moment without seeing barriers up everywhere, particularly when Crossrail was happening. If you walk down Oxford Street and you go to places like Tottenham Court Road, where the whole station was effectively being rebuilt, it's not a pretty sight. But when it's all finished and open, and you know, trains are running, it is worth it. I'm assured of that. Right, this is me building the depot. Now, because I like building looping lines in this series, it made sense to build the depot somewhere where trams could easily loop round, either continuing the journey or returning to the depot. So this interchange we have with the street trams here is actually what becomes the starting and end points for all of these routes, or at least these two. There will be another set of loop lines and depots and stuff built for when we do the other line, which will be in the near future, but it won't be next episode. I don't even know what we'll be doing next episode yet. I haven't really thought that far ahead. But yeah, this now means I can loop lines. Again, I've done lots of test runs off camera, and it works okay. A lot of vehicles do break down, although surprisingly it was the PreMetro Royal M's that were breaking down a lot. The L's weren't really, and then the other trams that I've brought in, to my knowledge, at the time when I stopped doing tests and started working on other stuff, they were still working like 2 loops and then back to depot without breaking down. So hopefully we can keep that flow going, because that'll be quite handy. And you can see here, these are quite long lines. These are quite long lines, so I might end up either shortening the line or splitting the line in 2. So having Tram Square as being like a terminus loop rather than the through stations that they are now, and then having both lines joined together, run around the loop either, you know, one direction or the other, and then head back to, excuse me, I had a sneeze, heading back to where they originated from. This was I did the slow line first. This is the express one that you can see me doing now. And you also see me meddling around with what size vehicles run at what times of day. That's all been reversed as well. It's all the same size vehicle in the depot. I think actually what I did, because I needed 45 vehicles to run both lines, so I bought 23 of the largest size and 22 PreMetro Royal L's. So I do have 2 types of vehicle running on the line. I told a lie earlier when I said I only had 1. That's not the case. I have 2. And yeah, they will just run whichever vehicle is next on the list. Essentially, will start running. You can also see here I build these like crossovers. And the idea was to maybe have some limited running services that would stop at more stations than the express services, but then also run through some stations that the stopping services would call out. The problem with that is, particularly on like lines where there's a lot of left-hand bends, you end up with the slow trams cutting onto the fast line, or you end up with, if there's a lot of right-hand bends, you end up with the fast trams cutting onto the slow lines, which is not really what you want. So we'll have to review that at some point in the future, because you can't put waypoints for trams on metro tracks either, which is a little bit frustrating. Anyway, that is the end of the episode. So as I said, I'm not quite sure what we'll be doing on Friday yet, but you will know by the time Friday's episode goes out, obviously. But until then, guys, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. We do still need to get the numbers up, by the way, because they have slipped a lot in recent episodes, so the numbers do need to still go up. Otherwise, episode 10 will be the last, which is next episode, in fact. So there we go. So do hit the subscribe button, do hit the like button. Do leave some comments down below with ideas for future episodes and all of that nice stuff. And until next time, guys, I will see you soon.